Many thanks to that group of Austrian artists for showing us that with energy, agility, and hard work, we can clean up the mess the planet is in. Guten Tag, hello, and a very warm welcome to this 4th Austrian World Summit. I'm Melinda Crane, Chief Political Correspondent at Deutsche Welle Television, and it is a great pleasure to accompany you as moderator at this truly unique event in an extraordinary year. Whether you're joining us here live in the Hofburg, online, or watching us on Austrian television, we are really glad to have you with us. Obviously, COVID has not made it any easier to organize gatherings like this one, but we did not want to postpone even a moment longer. Because as those images that we saw just now in the film remind us, the climate crisis is a burning issue. The fact that we are able to hold the summit this year is due to the tireless commitment of the summit's CEO and director. Monica, it is absolutely great to be with you again.
Thank you, Melinda, and good morning from this wonderful Spanish riding school, which is a part of the Hofburg, where we are here in the Spanish riding school. And yes, what a year. You know, when we started to plan our 4th Austrian World Summit last December, we had no idea what challenges we have to face this year. But you know, what we always knew is that we won't stop to work. The climate crisis is real, and coronavirus will not make it less important. So we knew we have to continue with our work, because you can be sure there will be no vaccination effective against the climate crisis. And Melinda, you said climate protection is a burning issue. Oh yes, it is. You know, it's literally burning in California right now. So I would suggest, let's go to California. And ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce the founder and host of the Austrian World Summit, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, hi, Monica. This is really fantastic. This is really fantastic. I've been watching this opening ceremony here in my control station here. It is wonderful. What a great opening. What a big bang opening this was. And I'm so excited about our conference because we have so many great speakers, so many smart people involved in this conference. So keep up the great work and let's get going with the whole thing, okay?
And thank you so much, Arnold. And in fact, we will get going in just a moment, but let me just take this opportunity first to greet some of our distinguished guests who are with us and also share a little bit about what's in store. It is an honor to welcome Summit patron, Federal President Alexander van der Bellen. Welcome, sir. Also, a great pleasure to welcome our long-standing supporter, Chancellor Sebastian Kurz. I don't know if he's with us yet, but he will be shortly. And so glad that we are also joined by the presidents of Slovakia and Croatia. Wonderful to have you with us. And we'll also be hearing a little bit later from the EU's Executive Vice President Timmermans with some more information on the ambitious new climate goals that the EU is adopting, Monica.
Oh yes, absolutely. So we are really, really interested what later this morning Climate Commissioner Frans Timmermans will tell us, and I think he has a big announcement for us, so we are really looking forward to speak with him.
You know, this virtual hybrid format that we're in, it does have some significant advantages because the fact is, throughout this summit, we're going to be hearing from speakers who otherwise couldn't be with us. And I don't want to give too much away, but they include a diplomat who helped broker the Paris Climate Agreement. They include leading climate and conservation activists from around the world. They also include political leaders from presidents to local officials, and a few surprise guests as well. Just a few words on our organization before we continue. As mentioned, you can follow the live stream on our website. That's AustrianWorldSummit.com. You can also follow us on Facebook in English or on Austrian television ORF 3 in Deutsch. We are eager to send out a message from Vienna to the world, so please, if you hear something interesting, do tweet it out using hashtag #ClimateAction. Some of our speakers will address us in German, so if you're here in the hall, we do have translation for us. So some of the things here this year are a little bit different, and one of them, Monica, is the fact that we find ourselves in the middle of a forest.
Yes, isn't it beautiful? I mean, all this nature, all these trees here in this wonderful old building of the Spanish riding school. And you know, we wanted to send a symbol that we people and the nature, we need and we have to coexist. And together with our partner for forest, we really turned this hall into a small forest. We want to send out to the world and to the public that if our world is sick, we get sick. And if our world is healthy, we people stay healthy. And ladies and gentlemen, let's go to a man who has been fighting for a healthy planet for so many years. Please welcome again our host, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
President van der Bellen, Chancellor Kurz, Monica, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My presence in Austria today is virtual, but my feelings are real, because Austria is still so much part of who I am, and the people of Austria are still my family. And it is so great that we are hosting this summit in Austria here, because it is the biggest environmental meeting in the world this year. Now, I'm in the movie business, as you all know, so to me, there is really not much difference between virtual and the real world. And here's the interesting thing. The marvels of modern technology have progressed so much that we can join hundreds of people right now in the Spanish riding school, and millions of people watching online, right here from Los Angeles. Isn't that fantastic? And from my control station here, I can see everything. I can see, for instance, the president checking his speech the last time before he's going to deliver it. And then there's Monica running around, worrying and schwitzing about everything. And then there's someone in the third row, hey, you, pay attention, stop picking your nose. It's amazing, the kind of things that we can do with technology. That you can do with technology is like unbelievable. But there's still, with all these technologies, there's still some people that think that the best way to light a room is to burn a lump of coal. But we're going to talk about that later. First, I want to just say thank you very much to President van der Bellen for being such a great partner for this summit for the past 4 years. You are an environmental champion, and we couldn't do this without you, so thank you very much. Let's give a big hand to President van der Bellen. Thank you also to Chancellor Kurz for showing the world that fighting pollution is not a conservative or liberal idea. It is just common sense. So thank you for all your great work. Big hand to Chancellor Kurz. And thank you, Monica Langthaler, and her entire team, I should say, that have not slept for the past 2 months as they organized everything that you see. Thank you very much for all your hard work, Monica. We love you. And finally, thank you to our sponsors, such as Herbert Waldner and Klemens Hallmann, for helping us reach the world with our message. I mean, Klemens has always been there, a big supporter of environmental issues. And Herb, if they ever do a documentary about you, they should call it Pumping Trees. Because it was Herb, actually, who brought in all of the trees that you see on the floor of the Spanish riding school right now. All those trees were delivered by him. The trees remind us that the civilized world needs the natural world. And they also remind us that civilization and the natural world can live in harmony. And it is this idea, this desperate need, that has brought us together here today. Now, all over the world, almost every environmental meeting, every sports competition, every movie premiere, every convention has been canceled because of this coronavirus. So why did this gathering not get canceled? Why did we just postpone it but not cancel it? Why did we feel so that it was so important to us? It is because the message of this summit is urgent. And we have a window of opportunity to act right now. I'm speaking to you from California, where wildfires caused by lightning strikes and record-breaking heat have turned more than 3 million acres. It burned acres after acres after acres, and it's been going on for weeks now. And an army of 14,000 firefighters in huge flying tankers have been battling those places. And the fire season hasn't even started yet. The sky for the last week has been orange or deep red in much of the state, looking more like Mars than California. And the inferno in Northern California has created so many fire tornadoes that the National Weather Service, for the first time in its history, issued a fire tornado warning, which sounds like a premise of a Hollywood disaster movie, but it is real life. But the thing about Californians is that we have a history of rebuilding. After earthquakes and after fires and floods and mudslides, we always rebuild. And every time they rebuild, they come back better. For instance, 2 summers ago, 95% of the town of Paradise, California, was annihilated. It was a part of a larger fire that killed 85 people, destroyed 19,000 homes and buildings, and cost over $16 billion in damages, and forced 250,000 people to flee their homes. I saw this devastation firsthand, because during the fires, I went to Paradise to serve the firefighters breakfast, as I always have done as a governor. And I love doing that, to show my appreciation, because I love and admire the firefighters, the way they risk their lives in the heat and in the smoke for the rest of us. They risk their lives to save ours. Eventually, the fires were put out, and the power companies, here's the interesting thing, the power companies wanted to go and replace the poles and restring the electrical lines, even though they knew that the faulty transmission line had caused the fire in the first place. Yes, it was a fire that was created by a power line that fell down. That's what created the fire and all of this damage. So when they wanted to rebuild it the same way, the city said, no, this will never happen again. You cannot rebuild the old way. You will put the new lines on the ground. And they passed an ordinance to demand just that. You see, there's a lesson for all of us in this, because the way to rebuild is to rebuild better. This year, as we all know, an additional disaster has struck not just California, but states and nations all over the world. And that disaster came in the form of a virus tornado that has devastated people and economies all over the world. How should we rebuild from this? I say, with the same foresight as the city of Paradise. Because simply rebuilding the status quo, of course, is the easiest. It requires the least amount of imagination and the least effort. But if you watch the smartest investors in the world, their money does not look backwards. Yesterday is a terrible investment. BlackRock, which manages more than $7 trillion, will no longer invest in coal. Goldman Sachs recommended investors sell their oil stocks. And over the last decade, fossil fuel stocks were the worst performing sector on the S&P 500, which measures large companies on a US stock exchange. Now here's a big one. ExxonMobil, which was once the most valuable company in the world, today is worth 1/10 of the value of Apple, which is valued at $2 trillion. So when you hear that government plans to spend stimulus money bailing out fossil fuels, we must ask ourselves, if investors aren't supporting those declining companies, why should taxpayers? Government must realize what the smart money knows instinctively. Don't invest in the past. You see this rotary phone right here? This is a rotary phone that was invented over 120 years ago. Now, such old technology served its purpose well, but it belongs in a museum. I mean, it's a beautiful phone, but it belongs in a museum. I mean, would you invest in a technology like this? No. You would invest in this, a smartphone, a phone so smart that it can do 1 million different things, and no landlines, it's wireless. As a matter of fact, last month, I spoke to Chris Cassidy. Now, you maybe not know who Chris Cassidy is, but he is the commander of the International Space Station. He was in space, seeing and talking to me right here on Earth, while I was able to look out his window at the Earth below going by. I mean, I literally could have waved it myself. We were not bound by wires or old technologies because the people making the decisions over the years had the foresight to look forward. Forward-looking decisions are needed right now. Right now, as trillions of dollars and trillions of euros are being poured into rebuilding economies and infrastructure in the wake of the coronavirus. These funds are so massive, they are capable of remaking societies. We have a tremendous opportunity here. All we have to do is pick it up. We need to build a clean energy economy. And the projects of the future, we need to put people back to work in sustainable jobs. We need to upgrade buildings and to make them more energy efficient. We need to weatherproof homes. And we need to drive cars that are powered by alternative fuels. And we need to install energy-efficient appliances. That's where we should invest our money in. And we need to do simple things that don't even require technology. We need to plant trees. I tell you, it can be done. Because I remember when I was governor, we had big plans. And like reducing greenhouse gases by 25% by the year 2020. And we beat it. We did it by 2018. We set the goal to require 50% of our electricity to come from clean sources. And we beat it. We set the goal of 1 million solar roofs on our homes. And we beat it. And I have no doubt that California will continue on with that momentum. And then we will step up and achieve another 40% of cuts in greenhouse gases by the year 2030. In 10 years from now, yes, we will have reduced another 40%. And 100% of clean power we will have by the year 2045. Today, even though California is only 12% of the US population, it attracts more than 50% of the US green tech venture capital. See, all this money is coming into California, and that's why we are so successful. We have the strictest environmental laws, but we are the most successful economically in the United States. And we're the 5th largest economy in the world. See, that's the future. This is the way to invest and to rebuild. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change is truly our planet's pandemic. It is our pandemic. I mean, if you think about it, that there were 1 million people almost killed so far by the coronavirus. But the pollution and climate change kills 7 million people every year. So that's the real pandemic. It is spread to all of the nations of the earth. And there is no vaccine. There's no vaccine except our own actions. Now let me close with one last thought here. In Austria's national anthem, we sing, land of the mountains, land by the river, land of fields, land of cathedrals, land of hammers with a promising future. When I hear those words with the music behind them, I feel something stirring inside me, and it makes me proud. It speaks to me not only of Austria's great natural beauty, but also of the hard work that the Austrian people put in, who have cultivated the fields and built the cathedrals. It sings of the mountains, which represents the beauty and the environment. But it also sings of the hammer, which represents industry and the hum of factories and the gears of commerce. This is the balance between prosperity and the environment, the harmony between civilization and nature. That is the ideal towards which nations must thrive. So as we rebuild our economies and our lives from the coronavirus, let us not only recover, let us reimagine and restructure. Let us respond to the opportunity before us. Let us not regret. We have a new path forward for the well-being of our people and our planet. Let us take that path. And let the anthem of Austria, the land of the mountains and rivers and fields and hammers, be the model of all of the nations of the world. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I'm introducing the next speaker, which is a great friend, a fantastic environmentalist, and an extraordinary president. Ladies and gentlemen, President van der Bellen.
Thank you, Arnold, for your very kind words. Excellencies, in particular President Chaputova, President Milanovic, ladies and gentlemen, dear audience watching via the world live stream. Welcome to our beautiful city. Welcome to Vienna. Looking at this room, I see almost as many trees, maybe even more, as many trees as people. Originally, of course, they were designed as spacers. They give also a wonderful contribution to the setting here. I come back to that in a moment. In the meantime, please accept that I change the language. I switch to German. Frei nach Erich Kästner erinnert das heute ein wenig an die Konferenz der Bäume in seinem Roman Konferenz der Tiere.
Conference of the Animals, Konferenz der Tiere was his novel, and there animals meet where people live in order to fight for peace and peace in the world. And there is a particular quote. The world will be okay. We will make it because we are no human beings.
Ich hoffe, liebe Anwesende, dass wir Menschen das auch hinbekommen.
Dear friends, that we will make it indeed. It means a lot of work. And you actually are the wrong audience, because we are preaching to the converted here, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So first and foremost, let me address those not sitting here in this room, and those not yet having understood how serious the situation is. They are the ones who have to be convinced that we have to act in view of the climate disaster threatening us. But this is the paradox, as I've said, preaching to the converted. We keep talking particularly to those being informed already, and it is much more difficult to arouse the interest of those not being interested, but we have to succeed in so doing. But how should we do that? would it be helpful to stir fright, to cause fear? Would it help that we tell them that we have our tilting points already now, and scientists have already warned us for years? And would it be helpful to remind people more and more of the fact that when permafrost soils in Siberia will thaw, that we would have a problem everywhere in the world? Would it be helpful to show them that it's only a question of time before we have the next dangerous virus which will infect human beings if we do not change our way of dealing with nature? Would it be helpful, or would it not be helpful, because the destruction of nature is going on? Would it be helpful to speak about money? Would it be helpful to say that in Austria alone, year after year, a climate damage of some 2 billion euro is being caused? Would it be helpful to tell people that this cost will multiply in the next few years? Would it be helpful to insist on the value of forests and to express that in dollars, as the Boston Consulting Group recently did? Their study says that the trees of the earth cost around $150 billion in terms of their value. 150 billion in the American way or the European way? It's actually 150 trillion, as the Americans would say. Is that much, or is it not? It is nearly double the value of global stock markets. And this does prove what I mentioned we are speaking of. All equity markets with all their stock companies and the importance of the forests on the other hand. And here, in that study, they are taking into account that our forests emit, or store rather, huge volumes of CO2 and also clean and purify water and air. And last but not least, also offer existence and survival to many. Would it be helpful to speak about money? I think it would not, because still, minute after minute, forest is disappearing, amounting to 30 football fields. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, it is important that we be informed about the consequences, disastrous consequences of a climate disaster. And it is also helpful to say and to see what monetary value an intact and clean environment has. But it is much more important also to develop a positive image of the future, something we can strive towards, because only a common goal will motivate us to do what has to be done in order to maintain and protect this one planet which we have, which has to be fruitful for all, fruitful and fertile. And it shouldn't be an economy which just empties the tank, but helps all to survive. A culture which makes it its duty to plant trees, even if we will not live ourselves, what the result will be, but our children and grandchildren will. And I'm convinced that if we look into the future in a favorable note, and if we believe in the fact that we can succeed, then will we also muster all the energy in order to make all these minor steps, and even like making them, not unwillingly. And to discuss these steps, we have come together here, all of us. And these steps do exist. Yesterday, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced that the EU would change their climate target for 2030 and clearly improve it. And the Austrian federal government announced that the means and funds for climate projects in developing countries under the Clean Green Climate Fund will be quintupled. Two major steps which we can only acknowledge and appreciate very much. Ladies and gentlemen, between the trees here, Virtually speaking, there is also a Styrian oak, steirische Eiche. And we know that that Styrian oak, as we call Arnie, is always following us. So once again, a cordial welcome to Arnold Schwarzenegger. You inspire us. You have always done so. You know what it means to work towards one goal, because as a youngster already, you stood up very early, day after day, and did your weightlifting. You had a target, you had a goal you were working towards, and you did everything for that. Our common goal, let us not forget that, our common goal should always be in front of us. We can rearrange this planet, and we will make this planet good. And then, in order to cite Erich Kästner once again, we are human beings. Thank you very much indeed.
Fantastic speech, President van der Bellen. I love it, and I especially love the energy that you had and the determination and the positive attitude, and especially when you talked about not preaching, we have to not preach to the choir, but we have to go and reach out and get those people involved that have not yet been convinced that there's global climate change and that it is caused by human beings. So I think fantastic, really well done.
Thank you very much, Arnold. You know, so many people are here, but many are absent. They weren't able to come. And in this sense, I have a surprise for you, Arnold. So many great people wanted to come, weren't able to come to the Austrian World Summit. And one of them has been championing environmental issues and sustainability for decades already. He has done so with unique dedication, experience, and passion. He's an outstanding personality and a friend. His support is a great honor. Ladies and gentlemen, His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am most touched to have been invited to be with you here today at the Austrian World Summit. And I am only so sorry I cannot be with you in person. Now, I need hardly say that the coronavirus pandemic has impacted every person on this planet, and the human and economic toll is immeasurable. But I have been greatly encouraged by the growing calls for a green and human-centric recovery, precisely because it seems to me to be vital that we take strong and determined international action to mitigate the profound threats, not only to lives and livelihoods, but to social and economic stability. We therefore have an unparalleled opportunity to reimagine our future. We have the chance to create entirely new sustainable industries, products, services, and supply chains based on a circular bioeconomy, and to transition our systems forever. Furthermore, ladies and gentlemen, we have an opportunity to rebuild the global economy, to set recovery on a new trajectory of sustainable employment, of livelihoods and economic growth. Sustainable investments can powerfully drive that recovery, be they in renewable energy, green infrastructure, reforestation or agriculture. They can be enacted quickly, are labor intensive, and have strong economic multipliers. So we must reinvigorate science, technology, and innovation to harness catalytic breakthroughs that will alter our view of what is possible and profitable both to us and, most importantly, if I may say so, for nature herself, within the framework of a sustainable future. Whether it is energy storage, electric transportation, carbon capture, renewables or biotech, sustainability and profitability are no longer mutually exclusive. One compelling example is in forestry, where we can now transform wood, the most versatile natural material on the planet, into a new generation of wood-based alternatives to plastics, chemicals, textiles and construction materials. The bioeconomy has the potential to ignite new industries, thus providing, at last, the economic incentive to value the immense biodiversity and carbon capture potential of restored and expanded forests. Finally, we must rebalance investment towards green energy, the regeneration of nature and landscapes, the circular bioeconomy, ecotourism and green public infrastructure. This offers one of the quickest and most inclusive ways to restore activity in the short run as we look to transform our economies for the long run. Ladies and gentlemen, this opportunity is an historic and precious one. As we begin to move from crisis to recovery, we have the chance to determine and shape the world we want, not just for ourselves, but for the generations which follow. However, this opportunity only exists for a very, very short time, and the window is closing rapidly. As I'm sure you will agree, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to get to work for the sake of our grandchildren.
Wow, that was really fantastic. What a great surprise to have him speak. And I think that Prince Charles is in the real deal, because, I mean, I have talked to him already decades ago about the environment, and he always believed 100% that we must do something about this in order to reduce our greenhouse gases. So he has really been fantastic, and what a great contribution that he made today. So that was really great. We're talking about the great leaders that really believe in an environment and an economy and bringing the two together. There is one person that I really admire the way he has done it, and it is Chancellor Kurz. He is a very internationally respected leader, and he has been very, very helpful in putting this conference on, and it always worked with us on this to make sure that it is a great success, and he himself, of course, is the real deal. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Chancellor Kurz.
Sehr geehrter Herr Bundespräsident,
Federal President,
Kolleginnen und Kollegen aus der Bundesregierung,
colleagues of the federal government, Lady Governor, dear presidents of our neighboring countries or neighboring region, and above all, ladies and gentlemen, dear Arnold Schwarzenegger, thanks indeed for the invitation. Thank you for speaking again at the Austrian World Summit, even if this summit this year, in times of a pandemic, is a completely different one. It has to be. But still, I believe it's an excellent signal which we are sending, given all these safety and security issues, all prevention concepts, and still, you have made it. We are having this event, and even if our focus now clearly is on fighting the pandemic and dealing with the worldwide crisis, it is so important also to react to other challenges, like the fight against the climate change. The goal which we all are sharing in the European Union and which unites all of us. And our main focus in Austria is not only to fight the pandemic, but also to help restore our economy in the next few months and years in order to protect Austrian and European jobs and thus maintain our well-being and economic affluence. And we are having setbacks which are of course harmful and difficult, but we have a major opportunity as well. We can benefit from the next phase in order to bring about transformation of our economy, which we have to bring about anyway, and we will have to accelerate it even. We have a major opportunity. We can benefit from this pandemic for a sustainable transformation during the restoration and rebuilding of our economy. Green economic recovery, this has to be our target in Austria and in Europe. It is possible to unite economic interests and the necessity of protecting our economy. In Austria, in our coalition between the People's Party and the Greens, we can do this with ambitious goals like being climate neutral, or between now and 2030 to have 100% electricity from renewables. But we have not only high-flying goals, we have tangible measures. And so I'm very happy to see that in our huge package of the 50 billion support measures in order to mitigate the crisis, so much money goes into the area of ecology. In 2020 and 2021 alone, more than 1 billion of climate investments will take place. Minister Gewessler has said it already. This is investment which helps us to build up our whole system in Austria and Europe and transform. This is investment in the area of the restoration of buildings, solar systems, and also in the field of the public systems. And we also see, of course, that this is a favorable and positive contribution to climate change. So, ladies and gentlemen, we see that it is not only correct but also possible to secure and protect jobs and also protect the climate. It is possible to unite these two goals, and we do that in all our fields. It is very clear to see that there are some areas where it is easier to do so, and here also, frankly speaking, there are some areas where it is more difficult. Austria and Europe as well, in many fields, also depend on a strong automotive industry. Many jobs in our country, but also, say, in Germany, France, and other European countries depend on that strong industry. And there it is a particular challenge, because we have to have stringent emissions targets and a difficult economic situation. We have to withstand both at the same time. And here it will be necessary, together with the enterprises and the industries, to foster decarbonization. But at the same time, we have to have realistic goals, and thus decarbonization, and at the same time securing Austrian and European jobs. This has to be united and implemented. And for that, we need realistic targets. We need progress in fighting the climate change, but as well a secure and rebuilt European industry. And by way of conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, maybe a word related to the European Union. I'm very happy to see that at the end of negotiations around these 750 billion, which are to be invested on the European level in order to rebuild the European economy, one has made sure that money goes into digitalization, ecologization, and future-oriented investment. I think it's key that we see clearly that all this is also invested properly and doesn't disappear somewhere. If we properly invest into that, it is a huge chance, and the transformation we are having in Austria will be accelerated and will be rolled out also on the European level. level. Ladies and gentlemen, the next few months will be challenging ones. Fighting the pandemic means restrictions to all of us. The global economic crisis we are witnessing will not disappear just after a few weeks or months, but in several industries their impact will be felt for years, and at the same time we must not forget, for instance, our fight against the climate change. I think it is key that we do not play off all of this against each other. All these measures have to be united, have to be in unison. Thank you very much, dear Federal President, for making this forum possible. Thanks to Arnold Schwarzenegger for his initiative, for his support, and also for your long-lasting and never-ending friendship to Austria. Thanks indeed.
That was a great speech again, and with a great vision for the future of Austria, great goals. And I love that when you talked about never waste a good crisis, which is a Churchill quote, and he's so right on the money on that.
Thank you so much, Arnold Schwarzenegger, und vielen herzlichen Dank auch an Bundeskanzler Kurz. Arnold has just quoted Churchill with that famous statement that you should never waste a good crisis. And we've heard from the Austrian political leaders, the president and the chancellor as well, that in this crisis, in this double crisis of climate and corona, lie important opportunities. We hear next from a speaker who has made the phrase "build back better" a leitmotif of this extraordinary year. We hear now the UN Secretary General, António Guterres.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I thank the Austrian government and Arnold Schwarzenegger for convening the Austrian World Summit. Last year, I stood before you in Vienna. Since then, much has changed, but some things have not. Economies have been thrown into reverse by the pandemic, but climate disruption has not. Lockdowns may have led to cleaner, breathable air in many cities, at least for the short term, but emissions are rising back fast, and in some places, they already surpass pre-COVID levels. Global heating is driving more severe and more frequent natural disasters. Wildfires in California, floods in Southern Asia, fierce hurricanes, cyclones and typhoons, severe protracted droughts. The Greenland ice sheet, Earth's climate early warning system, is melting at unprecedented speed. And now, a global pandemic has laid bare fragilities that we have ignored for too long. Just as COVID-19 does not affect everyone the same, climate change is having an unequal impact, targeting the world's poorest and the most vulnerable people. This is why we speak of climate justice. The wealthiest 10% of the population are responsible for more than half of greenhouse gas emissions. The poorest and most vulnerable 50% contribute just 7%. Dear friends, a year ago, I urged you to join forces to work with governments and business leaders on practical climate solutions. I challenged you to bring concrete plans to last September's Climate Action Summit. Since then, more than 100 institutions have come together in 40 coalitions, providing answers on coal, shipping, transport and heavy industry and cooling, from resilience and adaptation to solutions that work with nature and not against it. I also challenged leaders to tax polluters and pollution, to reform fossil fuel subsidies and to stop building new coal-fired power plants. Now, 1 year later, as countries mobilize trillions of dollars of taxpayers' money for economic recovery, we have a choice of two paths. We can either throw away money on the fossil fuels of the past, that is the road to more pollution, worse health outcomes, stranded assets and greater climate destruction, or we can invest in the technologies of the future, renewable energy, nature-based solutions, sustainable transport and green technologies. Only one of these paths is rational. There is only one that will help us recover better. We must choose the sustainable path. It is a moral duty and an economic imperative. That is why the world's largest investors are already divesting from polluting industries, especially coal. They see these outdated technologies make no commercial sense. Without taxpayer subsidies, they are bankrupt enterprises. The cost of renewables is already lower. It now costs less to build new renewable energy capacity, including battery storage, than to continue operating 39% of the world's existing coal capacity. That figure is expected to reach 60% by 2022. In response, investors are moving at scale into the growth sectors of the future. As nations face unemployment levels not seen for generations, it is with clean technologies that we can offer the best path back to prosperity. Renewables already offer 3 times more jobs than the fossil fuel industry, and they're only just now starting to scale up. Those are the economic opportunities. There are also opportunity costs, as the colossal price of climate inaction continues to mount. A failure to act now will make it more difficult to limit climate change in the future. It will also end up costing us far more in lives, livelihoods, and property. So, I am frankly bewildered by those who argue that we cannot afford to take climate action. The obvious reality is that taking climate action is the only path to sustained economic growth and decent job creation. Not just for future generations or political cycles, but right now, in the world we live in today. This is why I have urged governments to take 6 climate-positive actions as they map out their recoveries from the pandemic. Invest in green jobs. Do not bail out polluting industries. End fossil fuel subsidies. Take climate risk into account in all financial and policy decisions. Work together. And most important, leave no one behind. Only by bringing all people on board can we overcome the climate crisis that threatens all of humanity. Governments, business and civil society must work together. We must protect those who have done the least to cause climate change, but to endure the worst impacts. And we must spread the benefits of the green economy widely, including supporting those whose jobs will be affected as global capital continues to desert fossil fuels. I urge Austria and other European Union member states to lead by example in implementing the EU's Green Deal. And I urge them to announce before the end of this year a new national determined contribution to the Paris Agreement that is aligned with the 1.5-degree goal. Finally, COVID-19 should not be used as an excuse for developed countries to backtrack on their development assistance or climate finance commitments to the developing world. The developing world needs support and solidarity to fight both the pandemic and the climate crisis. This is the only way we will get the job done, by working together in solidarity with the most vulnerable. I urge you to join the global effort to address the climate crisis and build a more prosperous and equitable future for everyone on a healthy planet. Thank you.
And we pick up now on that ringing appeal with an eminent panel that includes leaders working to make the European Union a model of building back better. It is my great pleasure to welcome the President of Slovakia, Zuzana Čaputová, and the President of Croatia, Zoran Milanovic. Please, you may take your seats. And also with us, joining virtually from Brussels, is the Executive Vice President of the European Union Commission, Frans Timmermans. Our title is Reacting to the Climate Crisis, the European Green Deal, and we want to dig deeper on some of the issues and messages we've been hearing. So President Čaputová, let me perhaps start with you. And you entered office last year with a very long record as an environmental campaigner, as a lawyer, and somebody who had pushed hard for change in her country. So You have, in fact, one of Europe's most energy-intensive economies facing significant challenges. What are you doing to make sure that Slovakia, in fact, will tackle the climate crisis and become part of the solution?
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this very important conference and allow me my short speech. Mr. President van der Bellen and Milanovic, Chancellor Kurz, Governor Schwarzenegger, ladies and gentlemen, it's hot, and it is getting hotter and hotter. We can feel it, can we? As political leaders, cannot pretend that climate crisis is not urgent. But our reactions to date are not cool. In fact, they are rather lukewarm. We already consume 1.5 times more than the Earth's resource capacity. We have a choice. We can continue this experiment with our planet, or we can choose to act. To act means recognizing that time for tepid diplomacy or greenwashing has passed. Change is possible. We can build economies that are both green and prosperous. We can breathe clean air. We can save our planet. But we have to start from ourselves. I started with my own environment, my office. We adopted a zero-waste strategy and are reducing our CO2 footprint. Slovak presidential office will become carbon neutral by 2030. We will install photovoltaic systems and gradually replace our cars with electric and hybrid ones. We will plant green roofs and at least 1,300 trees a year, starting my first 500 next month. We are already using 100% green electricity. We stopped using plastic. We have bee colonies in the presidential garden, and just last week we produced our first honey. I know it might seem too little, and it will be if no one joins in. Experts estimate that by 2100, the climate change will be 5 times as deadly as COVID-19. Yet some still question the devastating and irreversible consequences of climate change. We have been able to organize ourselves and create over 20 parallel teams worldwide to develop anti-COVID vaccine because we lacked the so much needed knowledge. In climate change, we all know what to do. We just need to show a genuine will and act together as one. My office is rather small, but our goals are not small at all. In Slovakia, we will stop using coal as a source of energy by 2023, and we will fully decarbonize our electric energy sector by 2030. We are increasing the share of renewables. We are introducing a government program to retrofit buildings and improve energy efficiency. This is not greenwashing. These concrete actions affect how people think and live. It is just a start. We must use the EU recovery plan and the Green Deal to prompt the whole of society transformation. Because this is what stopping climate change requires. Some might think this is too ambitious or impossible, but I choose to follow Nelson Mandela. It always seems impossible until it's done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Chaputova, for outlining your ambitious plans. President Milanovic, just this summer, you announced that you will be joining President van der Bellen's initiative for more climate ambition. Why did you take that step, and what is the situation in Croatia? What needs to change?
Ladies and gentlemen, dear Hans, thank you for the invitation. Madam Chaputova, Franz Timmermans, haven't seen you for quite long, 5 years. Men can pick one's company, so I thought by accepting the invitation of the Austrian president to join this initiative, I picked the good company for the good cause. That's in a nutshell everything. Croatia cannot reach far. We are a small country. We are heavily reliant, I would say all too reliant on the tourist economy, which again, is, it goes without saying, depends on the and is very associated with the preservation of the environment. So that's what we make for a living. In more perfect circumstances, I would like to see Croatia as a country developing iPhone, but in the absence thereof, we do what we can. So the clean environment and the balance of nature matters big time in Croatia. By the estimates of the European Energy Agency, Croatia has been most adversely affected environmentally of all European countries, not the most, the third. So ignominious third place by all accounts and standards of environment taken together. Now, it's hardly palpable or reachable by the common human senses. You cannot see it around, but that's what counts. I don't know how they count it, but they do it. And that should be taken into account. On the surface, in Croatia, everything looks fine. It's clean, it's attractive. We draw on the renewable resources way above, head and shoulders above European average, because these are the circumstances, because we can. So Albania does. Hydroenergy. Croatia, hydro plus other sources, but it's just a fraction of the whole picture. In a nutshell, there is actually English curse which has been wrongly associated with the Chinese. No Chinese sources support it. May you live in interesting times. So we do actually live in the interesting times. The world is changing. All the circumstantial evidences, if you don't trust science, tell you that something weird and dangerous is going on. If you don't trust in scientific causation, then the temporal correlation would tell you the story. Simply, these are the things that we haven't seen before. And it will affect our lives and our economies gravely. If we don't move from this point, if we don't take decisive action to bring this intervention to a close. This is actually a matter of political will, a very vague and worn-out phrase used by everybody, but essentially the matter of institutions, because the human civilization, the human history, has not been uninterrupted path and pattern of progress. In natural philosophy, in science, in small, painful, piecemeal improvements and incremental advance, but it has been, but in institutional terms, it hasn't. So people, human race, proved many times, are proving time and again that they are able, they have that weird capacity to mess it up and to fail miserably. You make technological process, you make progress in the natural philosophy of the yester century and yesteryear, but somehow human societal institutions fail. And this is the story not about science, not about progress. Actually, we have it too much. It's an overdose. It's about ability of institutions, of laws, of imposed kind of behavior and accepted kind of behavior to simply take a lead in the society. We can make decent living, we can make great living, but something has to change. This is about institutions. It wouldn't be for the first time in the human history of the modern era, pre-modern era, that we came to a lull, to stand still or into the reverse mode, because we were simply too arrogant. Now I'm sounding like a preacher, and since preacher I'm not, I will stop here.
Thank you very much, President Milanovic. And thank you also for your reminder that we need to listen to the science and the facts. For many people who were here last year, that will remind them of the words of Greta Thunberg, who called upon us to do exactly that.
Give them benefit of doubt.
Thank you so much. Let us go now to Brussels and Vice President Timmermans. And we heard a bold call, Mr. Timmermans, yesterday from the Commission's President, Ursula von der Leyen, wanting to ratchet up the EU's climate targets to 55% reductions of CO2 by 2030. So let me ask you how you want to turn that into ambitious action on the ground.
Well, as you know, by the way, hello to everyone there, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. As you know, our member states have decided that Europe needs to be the first climate neutral continent by 2050. So if you want to get there, you need to have a plan. You can't just have this ambition and then do nothing and just wait for things to happen. So what we've done is actually mapped out what needs to be done between now and 2050 in steps to get us to where we need to be. And we took a deep dive into our societies and economies, and then we saw that we can accelerate this if we reduce our emissions by 55% as compared to 1990 in 2030. We can do that. But to do that, we will need to look at our emissions in our cars, we will need to look at our energy sector, at the built environment, etc., etc. And for all of this, we will have concrete plans that we will submit to the European Parliament and to the Member States next year. And I think it is important to emphasize that we now probably have 1 decade where we could fix this. You know, I became a grandfather for the first time 2 months ago. And I was holding my grandson, and I was looking at him and his total defenselessness. And I was thinking, if we don't, in the years to come, if we don't set our planet on a different course, what sort of planet will he inherit? What sort of planet will we have in 20 years from now if we don't really start making some radical choices right now? And that is driving me to make sure that we make these proposals, that these proposals are realistic. Our impact assessment shows they're feasible. We can do this. Of course, it's going to be difficult. But as António Guterres said, just imagine if we do nothing, what the cost will be to our society, how the inequalities that already are horrible in our society will increase. You know, I know that Governor Schwarzenegger's home state is now suffering so much. I mean, these are horrible images we get from California. We don't want that. We want to do something to prevent that. And the beautiful thing is, although it's hard, it can be done. We have the technology, we have the people. What it needs, and I really want to echo what was said earlier, what we need is political will. We can get this organized. That's why the European Commission is proposing this roadmap. If we take this step by step, we will get to minus 55% in 2030, and then the trajectory from 2030 to 2050 becomes a lot more feasible. If we fail in the years to come, then it's going to be extremely difficult to get to climate neutrality in 2050. And if we fail there, I mean, we've already seen what the effects are of 1 degree increase of temperature. I just don't want to imagine what happens if we have 2 or 3 degrees increase.
Thank you very much, Vice President. We'll come back to you in just a moment, but let me pick up on the question of political will with a really quick follow-up to the 2 presidents and request for a 2-sentence answer, because unfortunately we're a bit over time. But here's my question. You talked yourself about the fact that the EU needs to move as one. As we know, the EU is not always great at moving as one. So let me ask how optimistic you are that the European Union member states jointly can reach these ambitious new targets. And please, 2 sentences.
I have trust because all of this is about justice, environmental justice. It is about our accountability. For Slovakia, it's a very useful recovery fund because we need to transform our economy to be more greener and more innovative.
So I gather that's an optimistic yes. And how about you, President Milanovic?
I have to be frank and tell you that due to the noise, I couldn't be able to grasp the question.
Okay. The question was, picking up on what we just heard from Vice President Timmermans in regard to political will, I asked whether you are optimistic that the political will is truly there in the EU to make these bold steps by 2030, and with the request for a very quick answer.
Well, very briefly, yes. I think people in Europe, majority, grasp from the old, instruction, when in doubt, what do? If it walks like duck, if it talks like duck, if it flies like duck, then it must be duck. So this is duck. This is the crisis, and the vast majority of the European population grasps that very fact, and it translates into politics, into voting, and into policies. And this is policy, and this is unstoppable mechanism. So yes, I'm an optimist, because Europe has been, but sometimes has not been, but then now again is the best place and the best region in the world to live, to raise kids, and to think about the future, and to work on the personal, family, and societal improvement. This is the best place.
And the fact that voters perhaps are moving to see it that way, your presence here, of course, is testimony to that. Two recently elected climate progressives with us here today. So we also have a message from Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez, who wants to weigh in on the same issue.
Dear colleagues, dear friends, this is Pedro Sánchez, Prime Minister of Spain. COVID-19 has triggered an unprecedented crisis that could change the course of history. It has accelerated already ongoing deep transformations, and it has underscored the need to review our relationship with nature. We can deal with this crisis in two ways: by simply coping or by driving systemic change to build back better. I definitely choose the second option. One of our goals must be to stop and to adapt our world, our societies to climate change, while ensuring sustainable growth that secures people's livelihoods and well-being. We cannot wait until the pandemic is over. On the contrary, we must use recovery policies to transition faster towards a more sustainable economic model that leaves no one behind and preserves nature. My country, Spain's Green Recovery Plan, in line with the European Green Deal, aims to accelerate the wind ecological and digital transformations. To this end, we have adopted an ambitious energy and climate strategy with cutting-edge targets on emissions, reductions, and renewable energy production. We recently approved a circular economy strategy, and we are in the process of approving a new climate change and ecological transition law before our national parliament. What the world needs now is both leadership and a commitment to emerge stronger from this crisis. Spain is ready to lead the way. Thank you very much, and good luck.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez there. Let's go back to Brussels now for one last question to Vice President Timmermans. And again, it picks up on that issue of political will. 10 years isn't a lot of time. The climate clock is ticking. So what do you plan to do quite concretely to bring the 27 EU member states along on this journey and reach those goals in 2030?
We need to act now. We've asked member states to give us their recovery plans by the middle of October. We've given them today the guidelines of what we expect from the recovery plans. We want to spend more than 30% in the recovery on climate policy. We want to make sure that we take our economy into the future very quickly. Most of our industries are in a deep need of restructuring anyway because of the pandemic and the consequences in the economy of that. So we need to act now. 10 years seems like a long time, but it's a blink of an eye. It's been 30 years since Total Recall. It's been 30 years since Kindergarten Cop. I mean, these things go so fast that we have to act now, and we can do it because the pandemic leaves us no choice. We have to invest. We've mobilized an enormous amount of money to be able to invest now. We probably can't do this exercise again anytime soon. So, as António Guterres said, if we waste this money now, if we throw it away at the old economy, what would we then have to show for ourselves if we have to be accountable to our children and grandchildren for the planet we hand over to them? So we need to act now with precise plans. How are we going to restructure the car industry? How are we going to make sure that we move to sustainable energy sources? How we make sure that we change the chemical industry? How we make sure that we come with a huge renovation wave that will help houses and buildings all over Europe to adapt, to become climate neutral. This will lead to the fight against energy poverty. It will improve the quality of our housing and our living standards in Europe. And it will create a lot of economic opportunity, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises. We need to act now.
Thank you very much to Vice President Timmermans in Brussels, to President Chaputova here with us in Vienna, and President Milanovic as well for this very thought-provoking conversation. Let's give them a warm round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen. So, Arnold Schwarzenegger, I know you've been following that discussion. What do you say to these very ambitious plans here in Europe?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to President Chaputova and President Milanovic and Vice President Timmermans, because I think they're the Team Europe. I mean, this is really, they can make it happen if they all work together. And to me, the key thing is that we don't just make up new plans, but, you know, I'm more interested in what happens with the 2015 agreement, COP21 in Paris, because we all know that 70% of the countries did not follow through with their promises. So to me, I'm more interested right now to also hear about what happens to those kind of promises. Are we meeting those and then go on to the next thing? But I think it was very encouraging news what I just heard from all three gentlemen, and that's why we call them Team Europe. They're great, great partners there. So that's really good. And talking about, you know, great news, I have some really great surprise here for you, because this morning I woke up basically Jim Cameron. And Jim Cameron directed, as everyone knows, Terminator 1, Terminator 2, and True Lies. And he is doing right now Avatar in New Zealand. And so because of the time change, they're like 18 hours ahead of us and all this stuff, I woke him up and I said, look, you got to do this interview with me because I want to talk to you about the environment, because I've learned more about the environment from you than from anyone else. You have been really fantastic about this. So he was able to sit down with me, and now let's listen to this interview that I have done today with Jim Cameron, with my very, very good friend. Well, thank you very much, Jim, for doing this interview. This is really great. As you know, the Austrian World Summit for the environment is very, very important to me. And so it's great to have you be part of the program.
Yeah, it's a really important thing that you're doing, and I know it's tough now with COVID and nobody can travel to generate some excitement and interest around this. But of course, you pulled together a lot of important people to discuss this, you know, super important topic for our global civilization.
Right. Now, let me ask you, because I think most people maybe don't know, how did you become an environmentalist in the first place? I mean, because you talked to me about the environment way back when I didn't even understand what you were talking about. It was back in 1984 when you directed Terminator 1.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the thing is, I'm not an environmentalist in the sense that I have any credential or degree as an environmentalist, but I'm an environmental advocate first and foremost, and that's been since I was in high school, really. Back in Canada in the 60s, you know, I just grew up as a naturalist. I spent all my time out in the woods. I love nature. It was part of me. I was part of it. And then in 1970, with the first Earth Day, the environmental movement as we understand it today was really born, you know, for the first time. And people started to realize that there was pollution and there was deforestation and all those things. And so I've tracked that into my adulthood. And of course, I'm a filmmaker and I'm a diver, and I spend a lot of time underwater, and I see the slow degradation of the oceans. I see the degradation of the coral reefs and so on. And that fueled a real interest in this. So I really began to study it in earnest, I would say, about 10 or 12 years ago, like really focus on it and really focus on the solutions and make myself a sort of lay expert on it. And, you know, so that's why I'm such a strong advocate now.
Right, right. And you have not been happy about the progress that has been made. None of us are. So the question really is that all of a sudden out of nowhere, you came years ago and you said, I'm not eating any more meat.
Yeah.
They said, what? You're not eating any more meat? And then you were explaining to me why meat is bad for your health and all that stuff, which of course doctors have said for years. So you have really been on that. And then you started talking and tying it into the environment. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think it was about the psychology of individual choice and what we can do as individuals to empower ourselves in this conversation, because there's a lot of bleakness. There's a lot of anxiety around climate. Some people feel crushed by it. Some people are in denial about it. Some people cling to demagogic leaders who tell you, don't worry about it, just roll over and go back to sleep. It's all going to be fine. And people are happy to have somebody tell them it's all going to be fine. So they just stop thinking about it. But I think the people that are intelligent enough to know that this isn't going to go away unless we do something about it, feel a deep anxiety. Like, what can I do about it? One person. It takes all of civilization to make these bad things happen with our energy use and our pollution and so on. What can I do about it? And so, first I was focused on renewable energy, and then I started to read more about the impact of our dietary choices on the environment in general, climate change specifically, but also ocean pollution, river pollution, deforestation, habitat destruction, all that. And the one thing that was in common from all those different bad things that were happening was our choice to eat animal products instead of living lower on the food chain and just eating the plants directly. I explained this to Rupert Murdoch. He was trying to figure out what this whole vegan thing was all about. And I said, it's very simple. The fundamental principle of business is you cut out the middleman, right? So the animals take a huge tax from us, from our world, for being the middleman between us and the plants. You take them out, you eat the plants directly, things get much more efficient. Like in terms of land use, maybe 10 times more efficient. In terms of carbon footprint for an individual, maybe a third, maybe a quarter of what you were. So I thought, aha, this is something everybody can do. Now, everybody can also change their religion too, but they won't. So it gets into now human motivation and human will and our ability to, process information and internalize it and do something about it.
Right.
So my wife and I did it. You've done it. You've gone largely plant-based, for health and for environmental reasons.
Right. Now, let me ask you, we are in a movie business. And in the movie business, I would say most of the people are kind of like real environmentalists, and they talk about the environment and all this kind of stuff. But I don't really see their participation to be actively involved in the whole thing. Like, for instance, when you are the only one that has built solar panels on top of your studio here in Los Angeles, south of Los Angeles. Yeah. But the other ones, when you fly over with the helicopter over Universal or Warner Brothers or Columbia or whatever, or Disney, there is no solar panels over the studios. Yeah. Although there's huge areas that you can actually, blanket with solar panels.
Yeah, we're not living in Alaska, or some extremely cloudy place. It's Los Angeles. You've got 320, pure sun days a year. If you can't do solar there, you can't do it anywhere. And you've got these broad roofs. If you fly over LA, it's a very wide, flat city. It's low population density. And they got, hundreds of square miles of rooftops, flat rooftops, industrial rooftops. And I thought, and it was exactly like you said. I was flying one day. I was coming into LAX on an airliner, and I'm looking down and I'm seeing all these acres and acres and acres of these industrial rooftops and thinking, why aren't we doing solar? It generates power where you need it. You don't need these big transmission lines. You're generating it right at, and it's highly distributed, right? Well, of course, it's the utilities, and it's their lock on government with their powerful lobbies and so on. There's always somebody in the food chain somewhere doing better off of keeping things the way they are than allowing for change. But, people like us, we try to lead by example. We try to live by example and, walk the walk.
Right, exactly. You have been always very good in kind of writing about the future, and predicting the future. I mean, hell, when you think about Terminator 1, all the stuff that we talked about became a reality.
Sure.
And so now the question really is, what do you see the future be when it comes to the environment? I mean, do you see that we can hit our goals and not have these huge increases in temperatures and stuff like that, or having continuous 7 million people die every year because of pollution? Do you think that we're going to make any headway here?
I think anybody that says they can predict the future, you know, is a liar. I mean, I couldn't have predicted in January where we were going to be today with this global pandemic. But I think that, you know, what I can predict is that we have a choice. We have a choice. We're smart. You know, we have this thing called consciousness. None of the other creatures in the animal kingdom have that ability to look at the future and plan against it, you know, or plan for it, I should say. So it's going to boil down to a lot of choices. And in some ways, they're sort of political and they're philosophical. You know, are you going to accept what people tell you, or are you going to go to the scientists, and are you going to really vet those things that challenge your belief system? I mean, so many people believe. I think belief is a critical issue here in this choice. If you believe that climate change is a hoax because you've heard that from people that you believe other things from, without checking on it, without doing your own independent research, without seeing what the scientists are really saying, then you're going to make the wrong political decisions. And we see people doing that right now. And I happen to think that we're at a real pivot point in history. If we turn our backs on science, if we turn our backs on critical thinking that allows us to find out the truth of things, we're doomed. But we're smart, you know, we're also smart. And we talk and we do things like this, conclaves like this, where we talk it out. And there are certainly a lot of people that believe wholeheartedly in the science and are trying to do something about it. Unfortunately, not enough of them are in power right now. So the question is also a political question. So as much as we need to empower people to, to eat plants, to drive electric, to embrace solar, to do all of the various initiatives that they need to do, we also have to tell them to get out and vote and vote these assholes out, basically. Yeah. Pretty simple.
No, absolutely. Now, before I go, I just want to ask you a movie question, if you don't mind, even though I told you
okay, all right,
it's
sure.
an environmental kind of interview. But I mean, is there anything, I know you're in the middle of shooting Avatar. I know you had to get up now to do this interview because of the time change here in New Zealand and all that stuff. Tell me, is there anything newsworthy that we should know of? I mean, when is the movie coming out in the theaters and what's going on there?
Well, COVID hit us like it hit everybody, hit us hard. We lost about 4.5 months of production. As a result of that, we've rolled around one more full year for a release in December of 22. That's been announced already. Now, that doesn't mean that I have an extra year to finish the film, because the day we deliver Avatar 2, we'll just start working on finishing Avatar 3. So where we are right now, I'm down in New Zealand shooting. We're shooting the remainder of the live action. We've got about 10% left to go. We're 100% complete on Avatar 2, and we're sort of 95% complete on Avatar 3. So we're just, we're very lucky in that we chose this as our production site years ago. We made the first film here in New Zealand, and it turns out to be one of it's ranked either the first or second best country in the world for its COVID response. Sometimes Germany's in the #1 spot, sometimes New Zealand's in the #1 spot. But we're actually able to operate. We're at level 2 here right now, but we're able to operate, we're able to shoot, and we're able to have a more or less normal life here. So we were very fortunate. So I don't see any roadblocks to us getting the picture finished, getting both pictures finished. Other than that, I can't tell you about the story. I can't give you any big scoops. You're certainly welcome as an individual to come anytime, and I'll show you everything. But in terms of what I can release, I believe in the mystery and the great reveal.
Well, first of all, as you know, I have visited your studio and you many times during the shooting of Avatar. Yeah. I always enjoyed it. I love the technology, and I love the way how genius you work, and the collaboration and all of this stuff. So congratulations on all that great work, and good luck with Avatar. And thank you very much for all the work you're doing for the environment. Thank you very much for this. Hey,
Arnold, it was great to see you as always. And great to see you with still a big smile on your face, making things happen in the world. From, I think, is that your kitchen?
This is my kitchen, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're still moving the world.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, buddy. All right, we'll see you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you will find the video messages that you've been seeing here at the summit on our website and also on Facebook. And on some of them, we have just seen here our best of scenes, but you'll find the extended versions there online. So we move on now to what for me is always one of the most inspiring features of the Austrian World Summit, namely the stories of people and organizations who are really making a difference. And we begin with a legendary scientist whose life's work is testimony to the potential for harmony between people and the planet, between people and the environment, a harmony that, of course, we were also trying to suggest with our room full of trees here in the Hofburg. It's a very great pleasure to hand over once again, she's been with us in the past as well, to the UN Messenger of Peace, Jane Goodall.
Hello, this is Jane Goodall, and I just want to say how sorry I am that I can't be in Vienna for this really important gathering, if a rather unusual one. It should be as the last one I attended, many people coming together, all wanting to make this a better world, and now most people separated and just checking in. But if I were to be there, I would be spending time with two very special people, two friends of mine, and I like to count the Federal President, Alexander van der Bellen, as a friend, and certainly Arnold Schwarzenegger. And we're going through such an unprecedented time right now with the pandemic, and it's so important that people realize that to a large extent we brought this on ourselves by our disrespecting nature and our disrespecting animals. We've created conditions which make it easy for pathogens to jump from an animal to a person. In this case, COVID-19 was born when a virus jumped from an animal to a human, created this new disease, which happens to be incredibly contagious and has just shot around the world, causing economic chaos everywhere, causing massive suffering, loss of life, and also loss of jobs. So it's so important to think beyond COVID-19, to think beyond this pandemic. We shall emerge from this pandemic, because we always do, but we'll then be forced to come to grips with a far greater threat, and that is climate change. That hasn't gone away. It was interesting that during lockdown, so many animals moved into cities and air became cleaner, and I think some people, perhaps for the very first time, were able to breathe clean air and look up in the night sky and see the stars shining brightly and not through a mist of pollution. People won't want to go back to the old ways. But unfortunately, there are leaders who can only think of the economy. You can't really blame them, but if we go back to business as usual, then it will be a very grim scenario for our great-great-grandchildren. So we need to rethink our relationship with the natural world. We need to get together to somehow develop a new green economy. And perhaps we need to think of a new definition of what it means to be successful in this life. But whatever it is, I'm sure that your discussions at this conference will be amazingly beneficial. And I so look forward to hearing about the decisions that are made, the conversations that are had, the great ideas that will be brought forth. And so once again, I wish I could be with you, because my various friends among the Jane Goodall Institute, Austria, for example, as well as the federal president and Arnie. So my salams to all of you, and I wish you a wonderful, wonderful conference. Bye for now.
And a stark reminder there that we have a crucial link between the climate and the corona crises, in the sense that both are exceeding planetary boundaries and putting pressure on planetary ecosystems. And I would now like to tell our next climate story, and it is a tale of trees, and how sometimes trees can help us see the forest, as we say in English. So it is a great pleasure to welcome Herbert Waldner. He is CEO of the nonprofit for Forest, which made headlines with an art intervention that installed a Central European forest of 300 trees in an unusual venue, namely an Austrian football stadium. And now I will take the liberty, if I may, of switching into German. Herr Waldner, Sie sind Immobilieninvestor, auch Leading Partner beim Austrian World Summit. Aber Sie sind nun international bekannt.
But you are internationally well known now due to that artistic intervention, as you call it, which is an initiative which gives a voice to the trees. What can you tell us about that personal change? Well, a justified question. As a real estate developer for the last 25 years, I had not much to do with forest protection and climate protection, but 18 months ago, due to Monica at the recent summit, I could present that project, and I felt all this energy here at Vienna Hofburg, and I was among those who were touched, as Arnold has put it, and more than 200,000 visitors we had in Klagenfurt football stadium in 2019 and 18. And when I then looked into the eyes of these spectators, I saw for forest. That's a unique chance of nature that touched my heart as well, and I felt that a stop was necessary. And as the federal president said, in 1 minute we consume energy of 30 football fields, but that triggers more than 1 million species being extinguished, and so it's also clear that we have to follow that movement. And I've taken up the initiative for forest, the voice for the trees. Tell us a bit more about For Forest, please. For Forest is an independent forest initiative launched by me, and together, like many organizations, we try to see more CO2 storage, more forests being planted. And Neira Lobe's book for children, she would be 107 years old today, and every adult should read that. The book was Das Städtchen drumherum, the little town around. And in Das Städtchen drumherum, they speak about the coexistence and living together of human beings, animals and nature, as the federal president has said it here today as well. And this is among our wishes in our initiative. We will implement this in reality. And is there a follow-on project already? Do you have a plan for that? Yes, there is a next project, Neira Lobe's book, The Little City say roundabout or around will be put in reality. The trees which were in the Klagenfurt Stadium, and some of them are still here, will be used for that because we see how good the forest is for us, and we want to build das Dorf der Zukunft, the village of the future. We do have the technology, as Arne has put it. We have the knowledge, and we also have the financial power. All these elements can and will interact so that humans, animals, and nature will make it. And I'm very proud and grateful to you, dear Monica, that I'm a leading partner to the AWS. We shouldn't only speak, we should walk the talk. And I'm burning for that. And forest should never burn again. Thank you very much for these wonderful trees, and all the best for your next project. Thank you very much.
Let me come back to that nexus that was mentioned by Jane Goodall and by Monica at the outset of the summit, namely the link between planetary health and human health. We asked the World Health Organization's Director of Public Health and Environment to talk to us about that nexus. And I put it to her that she had just recently written an article saying that the destruction of nature is a cause of the coronavirus. So I asked her whether that means she was hardly surprised by the pandemic.
It was a question of time. We have been destroying nature and our ecosystems. We have been doing deforestation, intensive and polluting agricultural practices. We had a very unsafe consumption and management of wildlife animals. We are increasing the risk of infectious diseases. By the way, most of them are coming from wild animals, and this is the case for the 60% of previous infectious agents and previous pandemics like Ebola or Zika or HIV/AIDS are coming from animals that jump to humans. So with all of that, of course, it was a question of time. If you add the perfect conditions that our cities are giving us, because we live on very polluted cities, plus with a very high population density, here we are. We have all the elements for any infection agent to have the perfect conditions to spread, to reproduce, and to make us very, very vulnerable.
And what exactly needs to change then? What needs to be our absolute top priority?
Thank you very much.
What do we need to change? Well, just a few things.
Interview with us. Thank you very much.
What do we need to change?
Looks like we have a bit of a technical difficulty there. Let me find out if we can get Maria Neira's. Here she comes.
What do we need to change? Well, just a few things. Since I am a doctor, let me give you 6 prescriptions. First one, change the relationship we have at the moment with nature, with the ecosystems. We are destroying it. This is not good for our health. This is not good for humans. Second, we need to provide basic services to our citizens, and I'm talking particularly about access to safe water and sanitation. Third, we need to do this healthy energy transition. We need to stop using fossil fuels. We need to move to a renewable, modern, clean source of energy. This is killing us. The burning of fossil fuels is killing us, and this has to stop. Then we need to look at the way we produce and we consume and the way we manage the waste of our food. That has to be changed completely and make it more sustainable. Our cities will be number 5. We are living at the moment in very polluted cities. We need to plan our cities for citizens, for preventing diseases and promoting health. This is critically important. And number 6, and this is an incredible request that I am asking you in the name of everyone who is talking on global health, stop giving subsidies to fossil fuels. Stop giving 400 billion to fossil fuel subsidies and start to invest that money in things that will not kill us. This is killing us, and this has to stop right now.
The World Health Organization's Maria Neira, thank you so much.
hit the nail on the head. I just love it, because the fact of the matter is, as she said, we're supporting fossil fuels, and as long as we do that, we're not going to make much changes. So we should support more green technologies and green energy. And on top of it, I love this woman because she's one of the very few that talks always about the health aspect, which means that she talks about the amount of people that are dying because of pollution, because so many times people talk about global climate change and people don't know what that really means. But if you talk about pollution like she does, and you talk about how many people are dying and suffering because of cancer and you know, heart diseases and all of those kind of things because of pollution, then the people connect the problem there. So she's fantastic. I love it.
Greetings from Costa Rica. I wish I could have been there to express my support for the event co-organized by President van der Bellen, Chancellor Kurz, and Mr. Schwarzenegger. Costa Rica's contribution to climate action is reflected in our long-standing development of one simple yet powerful nature-based solution: the preservation and conservation of high-quality land and marine ecosystems. Let nature be. Let it guide our efforts to build forward better. Thank you.
So let us now drill a bit deeper on the topic of green recovery and building back better. And we hear from a financial institution with a key role. It's a pleasure to welcome the Managing Director of the European Investment Bank, Wilhelm Molterer. Very nice to have you with us. So during the panel a little bit earlier with our two European Union presidents and also Vice President Timmermans, we heard some big numbers when it comes to financing green recovery in Europe, but clearly it is absolutely crucial to put those funds to work soon so that they really create change on the ground. Now, how can the EIB help make that happen?
First of all, hello everybody. Arnie, long time no seen. Second, it's your bank, what we are talking about. It's the European Investment Bank, the Bank of the European Union. What's the mission? It's simply to turn visions into reality and translate targets into investment. That's EIB. And we have a clear mission statement currently put in place. First of all, 100% of EIB's business, which is incentivizing roughly 200 billion investment a year, is to be Paris-aligned from 2021 onwards. Second, we have made a clear decision. 50% of the total volume of EIB has to be climate-related, towards climate adaptation and climate mitigation. And third, our target is to make $1 trillion investment in the next 10 years, 2020 to 2030, climate-related. What's necessary to do? You have, and this is not too much discussed today currently, we have to integrate private money and give the private money the right direction. And that's what we are currently practically doing, all thanks to EFSI, which I am the managing director of. You can also may know it as Juncker Plan. We have 33 billion guarantee, and we translate this into at least 500, maybe 550 billion investment. Means the best use of public money by integrating and incentivizing private money and turn this in the right direction. And out of this 500 plus, We are keen to have 40% of this already climate-oriented. And the clear target setting by Ursula von der Leyen gives an orientation where to go. And that's our mission.
Let me ask you to bring it home to Austria, as it were, because we have important Austrian leaders here with us, not only at the federal level, but also state and local. So perhaps you can just share what you think is most important for Austria to participate effectively in the Green Recovery Plan.
Well, first of all, member states are not always happy to listen to advices. Therefore, I translate this into, I would say, my experience. First, a clear target. A clear target. Second, set the priorities right. Which means if you want to achieve the targets, the priorities for me are clear. It's sustainable transport, it's green energy, it's sustainable industry, it's sustainable housing and building, and you have also to incentivize investment into RDI, digitalization, and startups. Because startups are the driver, and there's a huge opportunity also economically. In my very personal experience in some member states, you have always a blocking thing. And the blocking thing is the either-or. You are saying either you should be competitive or sustainable. That's crazy nonsense. You have to skip the either-or and replace it by the end. You are competitive via sustainable development, and not the other way around. And I think this is the real critical thing. And last but not least, give the public money and also the private money the right orientation, to put it in the right basket for investing. Not creating stranded investments, and make it really an economic success. Then you're on the right track.
Very good. Thank you so much. Wilhelm Molterer from the European Union's Investment Bank. And let us now take it, in fact, to a different governmental level here in Austria and talk about the green recovery and building back better with Austria's Federal Minister for Climate Protection, Environment, Energy, Mobility, Innovation and Technology. A very big portfolio there, Leonore Gewessler. You are, in fact, Austria's first ever Green Party Minister for Mobility and Climate Action. So what for you are the absolute key projects to boost sustainability?
There's a lot to say about that because it's a big question, and at the same time we see that we are in a time of emergency. We are in a time where we need to go beyond the either-or to now and everything now. So that's what we're trying to do in Austria, and that's what we successfully did in Austria with the recovery packages, because I think this moment in time is indeed crucial. It's the moment that we get it right, that we put tracks into the future, and that's what we need to do now. So that's what we did with the €2 billion recovery package, and I'm responsible for infrastructure also. And why is infrastructure so important? It determines our emissions, not just for days or weeks, but for years, decades, and maybe even centuries, if you look at this room. So that's why we put money into retrofitting houses, €650 million into retrofitting houses. That's why we have the highest ever investment in train infrastructure. And I think there's one aspect that I want to highlight. Because one thing is to say we invest into the future. But I think it's crucial. It's crucial that we stop investing in the past. And that's what we did here. That's what we did in the investment premium that we designed for companies. We excluded investments in fossil infrastructure. And that's the way to go. And I hope that can be an example. On the one hand, we need to invest into the future, but we also need to stop investing in the past because we need to put our money where our words are, and that's what we're trying to do in Austria.
Arnold Schwarzenegger reminded us earlier, yesterday is a very bad investment. So we've talked a lot about climate action and the need for ambitious goals and targets. What are your main goals for the next 4 years, quite concretely?
So yes, we have very ambitious targets. Austria wants to be climate neutral by 2040, and we've pledged that we produce all our electricity 100% renewable by 2030. So that's big goals. But it's important also here that very concretely, like Frans Timmermans say, one piece at a time, we put it into legislations, we put it into programs, and we get it on the ground to actually be effective. So yesterday, only yesterday, I'm very happy about that, because it's very big news for Austria. We brought to public consultation our new Renewable Energy Deployment Act. So that will be the key piece of legislation for reaching 100% renewable electricity by 2030. We're working hard on a tax reform to make actually our tax system a lever for environmental protection, for climate action. CO2 pricing in Austria to be introduced in 2022. There is one sector which many of us in many countries probably gives us a headache. It's the mobility sector. It's a key challenge, how to decarbonize that sector. So we're working on a lot of projects there. One of them, one very dear to my heart, a flat rate ticket for all public transport in Austria at the equivalent of €3 a day. So it's called a 1, 2, 3 tickets. It will have 3 different stages. For one region, for 2 regions, and for the whole country. But flat rate, easy to use, cheap public transportation for people. And let me mention one more thing, because President Chaputova said it earlier. Climate action, of course, doesn't end at our borders. We have an international responsibility. We have a responsibility as developed nations. And some of you might know that I've been a climate action campaigner for many years, also before I became a minister. And so it was very dear to my heart, and President van der Bellen mentioned it, that we increased our contribution to the Green Climate Fund only this week, a 5-fold increase for the next period of the Green Climate Fund, because I think that's also part of what climate action needs to be for developed nations. One very last remark, because Frans Timmermans mentioned it, I want to applaud the European Commission for the courage and the boldness for the at least 55% target, and I can pledge from this stage we will do everything from Austria to make sure we have an ambitious at least 55% target in the European Union, because we need to lead the way. That's our chance, that's our big chance for the future, and the time to do it is now.
Thank you very, very much, Minister Gewessler, for that inspiring message.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Gewessler, and also Mr. Molterer for the great, great talk. And of course, I love the message of Minister Gewessler, don't invest in the past, invest in the future. And this is exactly where the action should be. And of course, Mr. Molterer was also fantastic with his speech. And I'm going to do a little test with all of you later on to see what your comprehension was of all the facts that he mentioned, just to make sure that you stay awake when those very important speeches are happening, okay? Anyway, the next thing that we're going to see is another interview. Not that I'm a journalist or anything like this, and this is not my forte to do interviews, but I just did another interview, and that is with another great friend of mine that I've known since 1976. And I'm talking now about John Kerry, who was the Secretary of State under President Obama, who I have worked with when I was governor on environmental issues, who was very, very helpful, very smart, is really heavily into the environment, and was actually one of the architects of COP21, of the agreement that made the whole world sign on to certain promises of reducing greenhouse gases. So let's go and see the interview I've done with Secretary of State John Kerry.
Thank you very much for doing this interview with us for our Austrian World Summit on environment. We really appreciate that. And I think that we would not have had a successful event if we wouldn't have had the interview with you, because you were the architect of COP21, which was the successful one where they actually, all the world came together and signed this agreement where they're going to reduce greenhouse gases and all that. And so I think that you worked your butt off on that for years and years and years. And we, of course, have been friends since 1976. You're a Democrat, I'm a Republican, but we always got along.
Always we're friends. We're always friends.
Sharing ideas. So thank you very much, my dear friend.
Thank you.
I just want to first start out, John, by just saying is that is it disappointing for you that COP21 has not yet come through with its promises? Because now when we look at the world, it looks like 70% of the countries have not really lived up to their promise. So what is your thinking about that, and where do we go from here?
Well, it's more than just, first of all, thank you, Arnold. Number one, thank you for inviting me. And thank you, number two, for your amazing leadership as governor of California. You did some extraordinary things and you helped to set the path. So thank you for that and for our friendship of many years. Look, it's worse than disappointing because it's a threat to the capacity of life to continue. It's a threat to sustainability on this planet. And the fact is, when we did Paris, we knew we were not able to get a mandatory reduction to hold the Earth's temperature to 2 degrees centigrade. We knew that. But we never expected the President of the United States, above all, to pull out of the agreement and to really give people license to go back to procrastination. So countries that we had really worked hard to bring to the table for Paris found a refuge in a way. And so the whole world has stepped back from the urgency. And if we did everything that was in the Paris Agreement today, Arnold, if we did, and we're not, we would still be at 3.7 degrees centigrade in terms of warming. The fact is, because we're not doing everything, we're heading to 4.1 to 4.5 degrees. So this is a moment of enormous urgency once again, and I hope you and all of us will seize this moment and do what has to be done. It happens to be an enormous economic opportunity, a benefit for health, jobs, millions of jobs to be created. There's no excuse for not doing what we know how to do, but we're just not willing to yet.
Well, John, when we went out of office, when I left the governorship, I started the USC Schwarzenegger Institute to continue on my work, and then the Austrian World Summit on Environment to continue my environmental work, because I didn't want to just stop with it because I'm not anymore governor. I think it's something that I became very passionate about. You did the same thing. When you got out of office, you started World War Zero, which is a world organization with the most powerful people involved. Tell me a little bit about why did you start that and what it really is, so that people understand that organization.
Well, World War Zero is named World War Zero because the whole world has to be engaged in this effort. It is a war because, frankly, the deniers and the procrastinators have declared war on science, war on facts, war on evidence. And the result is we're fighting just to establish a baseline of truth here about what is happening to us. And it is zero because that is the goal that the world's thoughtful, the scientists, the UN, others have adopted the notion that we must get to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Sooner, really, I am convinced. So World War Zero is an effort to bring unlikely allies together. I mean, you described it in your introduction of me. A Republican governor, a Democrat Secretary of State and Senator, but both of us know there's no Republican or Democrat label on pollution. There's no Republican or Democrat label on what's happening in California today with the burning, what's happening with the melting of ice, the rising of the sea level, the extraordinary impact on crops, the movement of people who are now climate refugees. This is a global challenge. And so we felt that we had to bring new voices to the table, not just your traditional environmental group, but unlikely allies who can change the conversation.
And why was it so important to you to have, I remember when you called me to be part of this organization, that you were insisting on having a balance between Democrats, Republicans, decline to state, independents, and everyone on this team.
And what is ironic, and Europe is ahead of us on this. I mean, I know Frans Timmermans well. He's a terrific, articulate spokesperson for this. I know Europe as a whole is deeply committed to trying to move, but we're going to have to move faster than anybody thought. I saw that Angela Merkel made a decision on coal-fired power plants for Germany. They're going to phase them out. It is absolutely critical that country after country step up for when we go to Glasgow for the next UN meeting, which will take place because it was postponed this year. It will take place next year. Obviously, from my point of view, I hope we have a different president who wants to be in this agreement.
What impact do you think that COVID-19 made on our environmental movement?
Well, I think it scared the hell out of people, frankly, because they suddenly realized, wait a minute, pandemics were supposed to be part of the climate change scenario. And climate, the way in which the climate is changing is going to facilitate the movement of disease around the world. And it will complicate solving the problems of some viruses because of the warming. The heat will have an impact. So I think a lot of people realize that COVID-19 is in fact connected to climate change. And they also saw it in the response. I'll speak for my country, but when President Trump stood up and said that COVID and China's production of COVID was a Democrat hoax, I mean, he politicized it, and then he ignored it. And now we know from his interviews with Bob Woodward that he knew apparently that it was very, very, very dangerous, but he told something else to the American people. So people see in the denial the same denial that you have in climate, a denial of science, a denial of evidence. And as a result, I think it has probably helped people with respect to the environmental discussion and the whole discussion about climate change.
Right. Now, to me, the most amazing thing is that here we have almost lost now, sadly, 1 million people because of COVID-19 this year. But with the environment, with the pollution, with the climate change, we are losing 7 million people a year. So, I mean, let's talk about that for a second here. I think that there has been a miscommunication by many people when they talk mostly about climate change, which most people don't understand, but they do understand pollution. So to keep it in a simple way and to let people know, here's a picture of a town that is overpolluted and it's going to kill you eventually. So, I mean, I think that's a very important message. Let me ask you another thing, and that is, I think that we have relied so much on this UN agreements and everything on nations and on capitals. And as you know, and you and I have talked about this many times, I'm a fanatic about doing the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach.
Right.
And a lot of times in those discussions, they don't really weigh the importance of ordinary folks, of companies, of cities, of states, of provinces, and the subnational governments, so to speak, also. And so what is your opinion about that, the importance of really having the bottom-down approach and the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach?
Well, it's essential, and it's also probably a lifesaver, because when President Trump pulled out of the Paris Agreement, the next day I joined with Governor Jerry Brown and Governor Cuomo of New York and Governor Inslee of the state of Washington. We had a press conference in New York, and we announced the We're Still In movement, that we're going to stay in Paris. So here's what happened. 38 states in the United States have all passed renewable portfolio laws. So under the laws of those states, they have a mandatory target already to try to reduce. And in addition, over 1,000 mayors in America signed up to the Mayor's Conference to deal with climate. And so on city level, you're now seeing mayors changing the building codes for buildings, or dealing with recycling, or buying an electric fleet of vehicles for the community. I mean, there are all kinds of steps being taken at the state level, at the city level, and it allowed us to be able to say, yes, President Trump pulled out of the agreement, but wait a minute, the United States of America, the people I just described represent 80% of the population of America. They're still in the Paris Agreement. They care about it.
We are finished with the interview. I just want to ask you if you have one last message for all of our viewers that are watching online or that are live there at the Spanish Writing School right now attending the Austrian World Summit.
Well, again, thank you, Arnold, for the opportunity to be with you. Look, the whole world has got to stop and calm down and begin to pull together. There are forces that are trying to pull reasonableness and unity apart. And all of these forces that are pulling things apart will not benefit any of us in the future. You cannot solve climate crisis, nuclear weapons, cyber warfare, extremism, COVID, pandemics. You cannot solve them in any one nation alone. We have to cooperate. We have to work together.
Well, thank you very much, Secretary Kerry, my dear friend, and I hope that you will say, I'll be back when it comes to next year's conference live.
Ich komme zurück. Next year, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
From the former U.S. Secretary of State who helped broker the Paris Climate Agreement, a very powerful reminder that we're all in this together. And that makes programs to support sustainability in the global south particularly important, because many of the world's most vulnerable people live there, and it is where climate change is hitting hardest. And that's what we hear now from Ugandan climate activist Vanessa Nakate. She founded the Youth for Future Africa movement.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Nakate, and I'm a climate activist from Uganda. Last year, I started a strike to save the Congo rainforest because I had read about how much it is facing destruction. Over 80 million people depend on the existence of the Congo rainforest. These are literally the lungs of the African continent and also the lungs of the world. We need our forests. We need them protected. We need our ecosystems intact. We cannot watch destruction going on anymore. Use your platforms to talk about the Congo rainforest. Use your voice to speak about the Congo rainforest, because millions of people heavily depend on its existence. That is why I fight for it. The Congo rainforest matters. The people that live in it matter. So we have to fight for it. Save Congo rainforest. Thank you.
And as you see there, our next climate story is a story about local action, and it is a great pleasure to welcome to the stage the governor of the state of Lower Austria. And in fact, many experts, including Arnold Schwarzenegger, believe that it's absolutely at the state and local level that we can make most progress in fighting climate change. So I am going to switch to German, and let me start out by asking you this. Arnold Schwarzenegger betont, wie gesagt, immer wieder den besonderen Einfluss von Ländern und Regionen. Und das Land Niederösterreich hat beim Klimaschutz schon lange eine Vorreiterrolle.
Pioneering role in the area of protecting the climate for a long time. So my question is, what are the measures that you are taking in order to keep this position of being a pioneer and to expand on it? Thank you very much. I believe that Arnold Schwarzenegger is 100% right, and he's also a great role model with his region, California, and we do it on a smaller scale in our region of Lower Austria. What unites us is a common thought. We need to counteract this trend, and we need to fight climate change through concrete measures. Otherwise, things are going to collapse, and there will be hundreds of millions of deaths. More people will be dying if we fail to act than have died through the pandemic. And we are hoping for a vaccination, a vaccine for the pandemic, but as Arnold Schwarzenegger said, there will never be a vaccine against climate change. There is only one drug that we can use, namely action. And we are leading in the area of climate protection in Lower Austria. Lower Austria is the only region in the entire European Union without nuclear power, without coal-fired power plants, and we cover 100% of our energy from renewables. And Arnold Schwarzenegger is right in what he said, just like all the previous speakers, that the communities and municipalities play an important role. And this is why we are also part of the Climate Alliance. And here too we are leading in Europe. And ecological building, this is why we have Klemens Hallmann here. Ecological building is something that goes without saying, on a large scale as well as on a small scale. Thinking about the large-scale projects, public buildings. For example, we have a prison in Korneuburg, which is one of the biggest passive houses. And we also have museums, etc. So we are not leaning back and resting on our laurels. We know that there's a lot that remains to be done. So what are we going to do in future? In future, we're going to make sure that we're going to expand our PV installed base by a factor of 10 and focus more on e-mobility, where we are already in a leading position. And together with the Federal Ministry of Transport, we are going to continue to expand public transport. We want to also expand the offer of buses and railways by 35%. So a lot of decisions have already been taken, and we are aware of the fact that any decision that we will take in future, whether it's a political, economic decision or a private decision, all these decisions have to be characterized by the idea of sustainability. That starts when we go shopping in the supermarket, where whenever we take something off the shelves, we take a political decision, a decision for a regional product, a local product, or a product that comes from the other end of the world. We need to decide on how we want to live and where we're going on vacation and how do we get there. There's a difference whether you fly on vacation once a year or 5 times a year. So I think that it is up to us how we want to deal with Mother Earth, whether we want to continue to hurt Mother Earth or whether we prefer a more sensitive approach and save Mother Earth. I'm more for the latter approach, and this is why, together with our region of Lower Austria, we're going to keep on being a pioneer and a role model in order to motivate other regions as well, because everybody can be part of the solution. That's what we're planning to do for the future. Thank you, Ms. Mikl-Leitner. And I'm very pleased to welcome Klemens Hallmann again. He's the CEO of the Hallmann Group. And you are also, again, a partner and sponsor of the Austrian World Summit. So I'm very pleased to have you back. You're also the head of a large and very successful real estate company. And I think we've heard it before, the construction industry and sector of buildings accounts for 8% of global CO2 emissions. So there's a lot that needs to be done in this field. What are you doing in your company in order to counteract these trends? What does climate action mean for you in concrete terms? I'm proud to be back as a leading partner of the Austrian World Summit. And first, I would like to say a big thank you to my dear friend Arnold Schwarzenegger in Los Angeles, because thanks to his indefatigable efforts for environmental protection, he shows how important it is that every individual contributes his share, because only together can we be strong. In the Hallmann group, many years ago, we already have committed ourselves to saving resources and to implement environmental protection in our buildings. We have a separate department that provides the best mix of the available technologies for the individual buildings that will be analyzed in order to derive the maximum benefit in terms of reducing the strain on resources and to still build affordable housing. Our creed is that we want to offer affordable housing while saving resources and protecting the environment. And more than 50% of energy is saved in our buildings, and we have an even more ambitious target. And we are cooperating closely with the city of Vienna. And in the 21st Vienna district, we'll have the first plus energy neighborhood of Vienna. And they will be producing more energy than the buildings will consume without the use of fossil fuels. So this building will also be capable of feeding the excess energy into the public grid, and we use photovoltaics, wind power, concrete core activation, and lots of other means. And we have environmental protection and low resource building as very important targets, because we find it is our duty to hand over this planet to the next generation the way we got it. And this is why we work very hard day after day to achieve this goal. And I would like to appeal to all the politicians and the business people. Make your contribution, no matter how big or how small it is. Only together we are strong, and only if we pull in the same direction can we protect the environment and our climate. Thank you. Thank you very much for this appeal.
Und danke auch an Sie für Ihre wichtigen
Worte. I would like to thank you for your important words.
Hello, I'm Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti. This has been a season of great difficulty for communities across the globe. And yet for many of us in the climate movement, this time feels all too familiar. Because before so many felt stuck inside their homes, our destructive behavior to our earth was displacing many people from their homes. And before we wondered when life would return to normal, we knew that normal could not stand. That's why it isn't enough to just defeat this virus, to respond only to the urgent demands of today. We need to go farther and reimagine what our world can and must look like tomorrow. Here in Los Angeles, we've set in motion a Green New Deal, which puts us on course to be carbon neutral no later than 2050. And as chair of C40 Cities, I'm working alongside the world's mayors to equip our cities with the tools, knowledge, will, and strategy to power our recovery, protect our health, preserve our environment, and get our people back to work, to continue leading the way towards a more sustainable, equitable, and prosperous future. That's what we can do when we're working together. And thank you to my friend, Governor Schwarzenegger, for your leadership here in your backyard and around the world. Now, let's get to work.
From the beautiful city of Los Angeles to the beautiful city of Vienna. And I'm very, very pleased to welcome the Vice Mayor of Vienna, Birgit Hebein. And you are responsible, among other areas, for mobility and climate protection. And dear audience, let me just note that this is European Mobility Week. So we're at a hybrid event, we're going to do a hybrid dialogue in terms of language. My first question is so easy, I'm going to do it in English and then we'll switch to German. First question, how did you get here today?
At first, welcome to Vienna. I'm here with my bicycle. I'm always around with my bike, summer or winter, since 30 years.
Wow, great. So I have to say, as a passionate biker, I love that answer. And now wechsle ich ins Deutsch mit einer Frage zum Verkehr
German,
in
a question as to transport in general, because this is indeed a major burden on cities, particularly as regards climate and air pollution, as in connection with noise. What you are doing here in Vienna, could you elaborate on that in order for a CO2 neutral mobility? Well, of course, climate protection means a transport transition. Without that, no climate protection would be feasible. This is the key challenge in cities, also here in Vienna. 40% of our CO2 emissions, indeed, are caused by traffic and transport. And this is to say that as a city we have a target, which means that we will reduce CO2 by 50%. And mobility transition, how can we bring about this sustainability we need? And I believe it's about distribution as well. We have to link it to the question, to whom does public space belong? And I'm convinced that it belongs to people and not to engines. So the target, of course, is and will always be that children can move around freely and safely, and also the elderly. For instance, they can sit below a tree and wait a while on a bench. Why am I saying so? I'm saying so because these are the ones particularly hit by this heat and by the climate crisis. So climate always in connection with social lives. What does Vienna do? We invest a lot into public transport. We have a huge and excellent offer, €1 per day, and you can use all kinds of public transport. This is sensational. And at the same time, we analyze street by street and cool it down, shade it, plant trees, and thus create a quality of living and also touch the people's hearts. We can see that the public space can also do different things. And this is so important, and we have to say here it is a challenge, of course, because 2/3 of public space still belong to cars. Parked cars and moved cars, and here we plant trees. And I know, of course, in the last few days a lot of talk has been about waldsterben and exploding trees here in Vienna. No, definitely not. Trees are the lungs of our cities. We plant thousands of trees, and thus we reach hearts and lungs. This means change has to be, the mobility change has to be, and it is possible, and only together. Thank you very much indeed, and you have said more or less climate fairness and justice is also a guideline for mobility. Thank you very much, dear Vice Mayor of Vienna, Birgit Hebein.
I fooled you. You thought that I'm asleep already because for me it is 3:30 in the morning. But oh no, I love staying awake. This is an exciting conference. And I just want to say thank you very much to Mayor Garcetti and to Mayor Faulconer and Vice Mayor Hebein for the wonderful comments that they made here. And of course, Mayor Faulconer is coming on next. And he is one of those great mayors. He's a Republican mayor, conservative mayor. And this is the idea of having all those mayors. First of all, because
Mayors are really the answer to a lot of those problems, because I remember when I was governor of California and we said we're going to reduce greenhouse gases by 25%. Well, the mayors had to kick in and had to help us. When I decided to build a hydrogen highway, it was the mayors that helped us build this hydrogen highway. When we talked about, million solar roofs, it was the mayors that helped us get us to the million solar roofs. So that's where the action is. It's so important to include everyone, and at the same time, Democrats and Republicans, conservatives, socialists, communists. It makes no difference what party it belongs to. Everyone has to work together. So now let's hear from Mayor Faulconer. This is the mayor from San Diego.
Hi, I'm San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer, and I'm proud to support the Schwarzenegger Climate Initiative. San Diego is committed to creating a cleaner, greener future for the world we live in today and the world we leave for our kids tomorrow. And to get there, we need more than just words. We need action. And if you think that the U.S. political gridlock stands in the way of getting things done, think again. Because in San Diego, we brought Republicans and Democrats together to adopt a landmark climate action plan to protect our air, our water, and our environment. In just 5 years, San Diego has slashed greenhouse gas emissions by 24%, and we're on the path to 100% renewable energy, 10 years ahead of the rest of our state. And we're just getting started. And we are proud to stand with you to champion the common sense solutions we need to create jobs, improve our communities, and fight climate change.
Water, a limited resource shared by 7.8 billion people. More often than necessary, drinking water is supplied in plastic bottles and shipped halfway around the globe, 1 million bottles per minute, producing unnecessary transport, CO2 emissions, and millions of tons of plastic waste. By using water directly out of the tap, filtered and enriched with magnesium, zinc, and silica, people can satisfy their thirst in an ecological, economical, and sustainable way. If not us, who? If not now, when? Let's change the world together, sip by sip.
Let's talk now about water. Oceans, in fact, are the world's largest absorber of CO2, but they do so at the cost of increasing ocean acidification. And on land, drought and pollution mean that more than 2 billion people worldwide do not have access to clean drinking water. So joining us now is the CEO of the global World Water Treatment Company, BWT, Andreas Weißenbacher. And I'd like to ask you just a very simple question, Mr. Weißenbacher. Why are you, as an industrialist, attending this Austrian World Summit?
Yeah, that's a real good question. Everybody is a little bit stressed after such a long discussion, so I like to make it short. And within the next 2 minutes, I like to share with you what I'm doing. And for the next 2 minutes, we focus on water, our common most elixir of life. And I see that we don't have a knowledge problem. We have an execution problem. All of us are aware of the situation. We are shipping billions of bottled water around the world, from the north to the south, from the east to the west, and back from Fiji to New York, from Paris to Tokyo, and heating up the globe. And as long as we don't have a real opportunity to fly to and to live on another planet, we have to take care of this planet. It's our obligation for the next generations, for our kids, for my Valentina. And my contribution for you, and again a Planet Blue, is that we support with the most efficient technologies producing local water from local resources and mineralize the water with magnesium, with zinc, with silica for everybody in every corner on our globe. And with this technology, I hope you all of us agree that we have to start now to take action and not wait. We should stop to talk and present. We should really act from my point of view. And let's change the world sip by sip, make it a bit better, with produced water locally. This is the most social water on our globe, and stop producing every minute 1 million of plastic bottles. Since this conference has started, we produced more than 140 million of bottles. With this amount, we are able to make a whole ring around our globe. This, I think, is enough. Let's change the world, make it a little bit better. And if we don't start now, then I think the climate will teach us more hardly than we can imagine, more hardly than today, and this will be a real tragedy. Let's start now. I'm happy to be here and to participate in this great conference. We need people like Arne, like our politicians, like our president, like our chancellor. Let's do it now. I hope we have more than another 2 minutes more.
Thank you very much, Andreas Weißenbacher. And we hear now from the leader of a country facing a mounting water crisis as climate change causes extremely severe and more frequent droughts. The Prime Minister of Pakistan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Some 20 years ago, if we spoke about climate change, we were normally met with cynicism, skepticism, even ridicule. But today, anyone can see that climate change is for real. Record temperatures in Siberia, ice melting on the poles, temperatures in Europe unprecedented, fires ravaging Australia, California, cyclones, hurricanes. If the world does not take notice now, I'm afraid we will be endangering our future generations. We in Pakistan realized about a decade ago that the glaciers that feed our rivers, the glaciers and the mountains that feed our rivers, the rivers that feed our population, the glaciers were melting at a much faster rate. So when my government came to power some 7 years ago in one of the provinces in KP, we set ourselves the target of planting 1 billion trees. We achieved that target. And then when my party came into power in the center, in the federal government, we have set ourselves a target of planting 10 billion trees. I really feel that this is the time for the world to come together.
Well, so many messages from all over the world. We told you we are today more international than we have ever been before. So, Arnold, are you still with us? Are you still here? Because I think we have something to do right now.
Of course I'm here, Monica. What's the matter with you?
That's wonderful.
I'm always here, but I think that maybe you forgot something. I mean, didn't we forget something here?
I don't think so, Arnold. That's why I'm already here, and you know me. I write everything down, so I'm not forgetting the really... And I wouldn't have forgot it, because this is a really important part now for me on the conference, and you know, we could only organize that with partners. So we all have to work together. And as I said at the beginning, it has been a tough year. We changed plans constantly due to the COVID crisis, but our partners, they always went the way with us. So please let me thank our partners, and I want all of them to mention them now and ask them, those who are with us, to come to me here on the stage. So, Österreichische Entwicklungsbank, thank you very much. Klimaneutralitätsbündnis, Ochsner Wärmepumpen, Herr Ochsner, von der Firma Warta, Hagelversicherung. Please come to me on the stage, just keep your distance. Hagelversicherung, Wirtschaftskammer Österreich, die Bank ING, Allianz Insurance Company, Klima- und Energiefonds, Ingmar Höbert, ÖBB, our mobility partner from the ÖBB, Land Niederösterreich, we heard her already, Governor Mikl-Leitner, von der Stadt Wien, Herr Magister Vogel, BWT, wir hatten ihn gerade auf der Bühne, Herr Weißenbacher, and our leading partners, please come to me on the stage, Klemens Hallmann and Herbert Waldner. Thank you so much. We all keep our distance. Klemens and Herbert, come to me, come to me. So thank you so much. These are our climate champions. Without them, this would not have been possible. Thank you so much that you helped us these last weeks. So, Arnold, what do you say to all these climate champions here?
Well, Monica, I want to just say to them, thank you for being our sponsors. You know, I tell you one thing, I always say, you can call me anything you want, but don't call me a self-made man. And this is a perfect example there. I mean, we can have all the conferences we want, but if you don't have a sponsor, and if you don't have the Bundespräsident and the Chancellor and the Monica and all of those people and the people that are sitting out there in the audience and the people that are watching it online, if you don't have that, you have nothing. So you need a lot of help. So I want to say thank you to the sponsors for their continuous support and for helping us with this very important message here to get this out in the world. And Monica, I also want to say thank you to you for the great work that you've done. This was a fantastic conference, and you did it, we did it, and I'm so happy about the whole thing.
Thank you, Arnold, and thank you to you, all you did for us and all what you always have been doing for us. But wait, Arnold, don't go away. I have still something for you. We have a huge present for you. But may I ask our friends here now to leave the stage for a very special moment right now and for a huge present for Governor Schwarzenegger. Thank you so much again. Thank you to all of you. Thank you. Well, Arnold, I told you, the very best always comes at the end. And now we do have a real surprise for you. And it's an honor for me to ask again the President of the Federal Republic of Austria on the stage, Alexander van der Bellen. Please.
Well, Arnold, meine Damen und Herren,
Ladies and gentlemen, this takes us now to a specific moment of this conference. Dear Arnold Schwarzenegger, it is a particular honor for me, on behalf of the Republic of Austria, to award to you the golden distinction, the great golden distinction with a star for your merits related to the Republic of Austria. And on such occasions, there is always a long talk, of course. But I'll cut a long story short. In the beginning, there was your huge success as a bodybuilder. In Austria, we were fascinated. We admired your successful movie career. And of course, we were particularly proud of the fact that an Austrian, if I may say so, became the 38th governor of the federal state of California of the US.
Vollkommen zu Recht heißt es daher in der offiziellen
Begründung zur Verleihung des großen Ehrenzeichen, I quote, it says, Schwarzenegger's decade-long extraordinary and multifaceted career has contributed to a positive perception and presence of Austria in the United States of America and worldwide.
Du bist Österreich, deine Heimat, glaube ich, bei all deinen Erfolgen.
Always have seen Austria as your home, and you have always been so closely linked to Austria. You have always catered to Austrian needs and Austria-America relations, and for that you deserve Medal of Honor, and for so much more. And I believe you also deserve it because in your maybe most important role as a climate action hero, you deserve this medal. For more than 20 years, you have been fighting for climate and environment protection as a governor of California. I believe in 2006, you signed the Global Warming Solution Act, a climate legislation which was a historic milestone in the fight against the climate crisis. And after your tenure as a governor, you founded the Schwarzenegger Institute and the International Climate Protection Initiative, and together with Monika Landthaler, you also founded this huge international climate conference, the Austrian World Summit. Dear Arnold, your merits make you a dignitary, and you deserve this great gold Medal of Honor with a star as to your merits related to the Republic of Austria. Unfortunately, you can't be here today physically, but watch out. We have found a way of sending this medal personally to you.
Now, action.
Now, action.
Ich gratuliere dir dazu von Herzen.
Congratulations from the bottom of our hearts and on behalf of the Republic of Austria.
Lieber Arnold.
Dear Arnold.
Lieber Arnold, nur eines
Dear
noch.
Arnold, just one thing. The Medal of Honor always comes with an official document signed by me. Only then will it be formally valid, so to speak. This document here, this deed, remains here. I will keep it, and you will receive it at your next visit to Vienna, and we are all looking forward to this very, very much.
You will be back soon.
Sehr geehrter Herr Bundespräsident, das große goldene Ehrenzeichen zu empfangen.
Thank you very much, President, to receive this Medal of Honor. That's a particular honor and distinction for me. It's the greatest honor in the life of an Austrian. And I have always been an Austrian, and I will always remain an Austrian. Austria is my home, and you can hear that, can't you? The Styrian accent still exists in my English. It has become my trademark. And I'm very proud of this as well. And I'm also proud to be an Austrian, because as you know, I keep coming back to my old home as often as possible, not only for Wiener Schnitzel and Kaiserschmarrn and excellent schnapps, but because I love Austria and I'm always ready to act for Austria. For me, this distinction of the great gold Medal of Honor is a symbol of my deep links to Austria. So thank you very much. And for me, this is a particular joy, pleasure and honor. Thank you very much once again.
Congratulations. Bring him Ton. Congratulations, Arnold. May I ask Melinda back on stage? Congratulations, Arnold. You know, we all love you too very much, and we are so much looking forward to seeing you soon here back in Austria. You know, you can go soon to sleep, so thank you again from our side that you hosted truly this conference. That was I promised to everybody, you know, those who thought you were not coming, we don't have a conference. No, we even had a bigger conference and you truly hosted it. Thank you so much and a good night to you, Arnold.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And from me as well, warmest congratulations to Arnold Schwarzenegger and warmest thanks to both Monica and President van der Bellen. You know, Monica, we were talking at the outset about all the challenges that the organizing team faced trying to put this year's summit together in the face of COVID-19. But the fact is the Austrian World Summit has truly lived up to its name. It is an absolute triumph, the most global World Summit we have yet seen in these 4 years. Just take a look at the faces, ladies and gentlemen, faces from all over the world of participants and speakers at this year's Austrian World Summit. And the faces that hopefully we will still get a chance to see, they include politicians, CEOs, experts, activists, and artists, all of them united for climate action. And ladies and gentlemen, as you've just heard, we do want to now celebrate together at the Climate Kirtag at the Heldenplatz here in Vienna. If you can't be with us, you can follow the activities on the live stream starting at 3 p.m. Austrian time. That's in exactly 2 hours, and that will be on the website. And let me just say thank you once again to all of our speakers, all of those who made it possible, and of course to all of you out there following us online and on Austrian television. Thank you for being part of the solution. And now I would like to just give a few instructions to all of those who are in the room, and we'll do that in just a moment. wir den Saal verlassen, denn wir möchten das auch mit Social Distancing zu Ende bringen, den Austrian World Summit. Also, es geht nach Publikumsplätzen und wir beginnen mit dem Bereich Eiche. Das ist direkt hier in der Mitte.